So welcome to lesson 8. This is masks and channels. So in this lesson we'll edit and merge two images together to make a new image for a publication like a magazine cover or a poster. So go ahead and download your files. And it should be lesson 8. And just right click on it if you're on a PC and extract all. And then open up lesson 8. There should be two files inside there. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to delete the Photoshop preferences files. And if you're on a PC, hit Control-Alt-Shift. If you're on a Mac, hit Command-Option-Shift. So I'm going to click on it and hold these buttons. And when the dialog box comes up, just hit Delete Photoshop Settings. And again, this will make everybody's Photoshop the same. So when I talk about a certain tool, it'll always be in the proper place with the proper settings. And then go ahead and minimize it. Then I'm going to right click on these images and I'm going to open with, and I'm going to select Adobe Bridge. Now if you're on a Mac, you can simply drag the photo right to the bridge icon on the dock and release it and it'll open it up. So here you have two images here. I'm going to shift and click on both of them. And then I'm going to right click and open in Photoshop. So this is one of the only ways that you can open multiple photos in Photoshop at once is through the use of Bridge. On a Mac, you can highlight all the photos and then drag it to the Photoshop icon on the dock and open them all at once. But on a PC, you have to use Adobe Bridge to do that. So you have two photos here. You have the runner and a beach photo. So I'm going to go to the beach photo and I'm going to click and hold the thumbnail in the layers panel, and then I'm going to drag it all the way up to the top to the runner, and still holding it, I'm going to drag it all the way down here and release it on top of her. And then I'm going to click on the layer 1, which is the beach, and I'm going to call it beach. So now I want this photo to be the full size here so that she's running on the beach. So we're going to scale this photo. So if you go under Edit, to Transform, to Scale, then it'll give you the little handlebars and you can make it bigger. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this to the top here, and then I'm going to drag it all the way down to the bottom so that it's completely covering her. Now there's more photo over here, but I don't care about that. And then I'm just going to hit the check mark bar here up in the options bar. And there we have it. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the background behind the runner. I'm going to hide the beach photo. So there's several ways to knock out the background around this runner, but I'm going to use the most precise way. And the first thing we have to do is make sure that the runner is just a regular layer, not a background layer. So right here it says background. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to duplicate layer. I can also go layer from background if I want, but I'm going to duplicate layer because I want the original one left there. And then I'm going to name this runner. So now you have 3 layers. I'm going to hide the background layer, and then I'm going to drag the runner to the top of the beach. And then we can actually put the eye back on the beach. So now we're going to go select and mask. This used to be called refine edges, but now it's called select and mask. So when I click on this, it'll bring up a new dialog box. And you can kind of see the beach behind her. And that's what this transparency bar is for. So if you click on select subject up here, it's going to automatically try to select the subject. And this may take a little bit of time. So I'm going to turn up the transparency here. So I can see it a little bit better. So select subject usually does a pretty good job. It's a great starting point where you can refine the selection from there. So if you don't notice a marquee running around the subject, you can try switching the views by pressing the F key. And you can see different views. And that's also selected here. So F cycles. So you'll notice that the selection did a fairly good job getting all her hair and all the wires coming down from her neck. But let's fix some of the hair. So let's click on the Refine Edge tool in the upper right corner, or you can hit the R key on the keyboard. And the Refine Edge tool is located right here. I'm going to make the brush size a little bit different here. So when I right click on the photo, I'm going to make the brush size 50, right around 50. I'm going to make the hardest 100% and spacing 25%. So I'll zoom in and you can see some of the hairs. Like this hair here is not connected. And what this does is it refines the edge and tries to find all the little flyaways. So don't panic when you see it go white, because it's going to go white a little bit and then it analyzes it and then goes back to normal. Also works great for the wires over here. Now notice her chest is missing. Don't worry about that. We'll fix that later on. Let's try the headband up here. Nope, it doesn't work on that, but we'll fix that in a second. And then I'm just going to go to the regular painting tool and I'm going to paint in the edge of her band right here. And the reason why it's not working well is because behind her it's really, really white light. So the band is white, so it gets tough. And then here I'm going to paint in her chest, back in her chest right here, because again it's a highlight and it's having a hard time distinguishing between the two. So if you want to subtract, hit the Alt key on the PC or Option key on the Mac, and the little icon becomes a minus, and then you can subtract area from it. And here's another refine edge over here. Now I'm really picky, so I'm gonna go over and I'm gonna fix her nose just a hair. And the bottom of her lip. And I noticed part of her phone here is messed up, so I'm going to fix that. And it's okay if you go over, because you simply just hit the Alt key on a PC or Option key on the Mac, and then you can erase what you don't need. So one of the tricks you can do is on the black and white view up here, you can see of any areas that you may have missed. And it kind of gives away a little bit of the, like there's a little bit of fuzziness here, but a little bit around her chest, but it's not bad. And if you have any stray tool marks, you can definitely see. So like right here. And this spot here. So now I'm going to go back to the layers view. So at this point, your mask looks pretty good. You just might want to tweak a little bit to finish the rest of it. And that's using the global refinements. And you can move these sliders to create a smooth, unfeathered edge along the face. So I'm going to smooth this to about 5. And what that does is it smooths that little bit of edge around on the face there. And I'm going to add contrast. I'm going to add 20% contrast. That gives a little bit of more contrast to the edge, so it's easier to separate. And then I'm going to do Shift Edge. And what Shift Edge does is it will it'll shift the edge a percentage in or out depending on what you select. And I'm trying to eliminate any kind of unwanted stray colors from the other image. So I'm going to go with Shift and probably about 15. And there it looks a little bit better. So the last thing we're going to do is I'm going to scroll down to the output settings. And I'm going to click on the little arrow. And I'm going to click on Decontaminate Colors. And what it'll do is if there's any stray color that's from the background, it tries to analyze it and then remove it. And you'll notice that the color of our hair got more distinct. So look at here, this is before and this is after. It looks a lot better. But if Decontaminate Colors creates unwanted artifacts, you can just dial it back a little bit with the amount. And in this case, I'm going to set it to about 60%. And then the last setting I'm going to do is I'm going to output it to a new layer with a layer mask. So what that's going to do is it's going to make a new layer of the runner, and there's going to be a layer mask deleting, or not deleting, but not showing the background. And then I'm just going to simply hit OK. So now I have a new layer here with a layer mask. So if I disable the layer mask, you can see it's there, and then enable it, it's back. So much better. So right now, we're going to go ahead and save the image. And I'm going to save it as lesson 8 underscore masks.psd. And go ahead and hit save. So after saving, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to select the runner, and then we're going to make a shadow so it looks like a shadow is appearing across the sand. So we're going to control click on the mask of the runner copy layer. Now on a Mac you're going to command click, but on a PC we're going to control click. So as I hold the control key down, you'll see that the icon becomes a selection tool. Now if you control click on the photo itself, it's going to select the whole photo, but we want just what's in the mask. So I'm going to control click there, and then you'll see the marquee is now running around the runner here. Then we're going to go to select, save selection, and we're just going to save this as shadow and hit OK. So now let's create a new layer, and it's the icon right here on the layer panel. And because I have a selection, when I create a new layer, that selection moves to the new layer. So whatever layer I click on, the selection moves along with me. So we'll then drag the new layer below runner copy. And then I'm going to rename this shadow. And while I'm renaming this, I'm going to say runner top layer. So I know that it's the top layer of the runner. And click back on the shadow, and then we're going to go select, and then select and mask. And I'm going to shift the edge on this. And I'm going to shift the edge to plus 36. And what that does is it expands the shadow a bit. I'm going to show the marching ants because by default it's not going to show it. So I could go less or more. I'm going to go a bit more. So in the output settings down on below, we're going to output to a selection. And then I'm going to just hit OK. So here we grew the selection a little bit. Now I'm going to go under Edit to Fill. And we're going to fill it with black. Now I could fill it with a gray, but I'm going to adjust that later on. So I'm going to leave the opacity at 100%. And I'm going to hit OK. So now if we hide this, you can see the shadows behind there. So then we're going to go to Select, and then we're going to deselect because I want to adjust it now. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to skew it so that it looks like it's going off. So we'll go to Edit, go to Transform, to Skew. And then all we have to do then is adjust the shadow so it looks like it's trailing off. And you'll find there's certain ways to doing it. You might not be able to move it the way you want, but you simply just move it. Like I just moved this corner one down, and then I could move the other one. So as you can see, it's going off and becoming small. So now in the Layers panel, because that's awfully dark, I'm going to adjust the opacity. And I can adjust that to about 30%. And you can see it's starting to become more like a shadow. So the shadows starting to look better, but it's still really too sharp and doesn't look realistic. So let's blur the top of the shadow so it looks like it's getting farther away. So we're going to go to the Filter menu. Oops. Let's set the skew right. Now we'll go to the Filter menu, to the Blur Gallery. We're going to use the Tilt Shift Blur. And this type of blur will allow you to just blur the top or the bottom. So the shadow's starting to look better, but it's still a little bit too sharp and doesn't look realistic. So let's blur the top of the shadow so it looks like as the shadow is getting farther away, it starts to dissolve a little bit. So let's go to the Filter menu. To the Blur Gallery. To Tilt Shift. And here you have the controls for the Tilt Shift. I'm going to click the peg and I'm going to bring it down near her butt there. And then I'm going to grab the top here and I'm going to tilt it so it's with the direction of the shadow. And then I'm going to pull down on this because this is the area that's actually blurred. This area here isn't blurred, but this area here is. And then you can adjust how much blurring you want. So I'm going to bring this to the top, and then you can select the blur level here, and you can kind of get it how you want. In fact, I probably even will bring it down a little bit farther. So here you're seeing how it's starting to blur like that. So again, for the controls on this, if you grab the middle of the tilt shift blur, you can move it around and place it at the bottom there. Then you can click and hold above here, up here, and spin it. And then this is your level from here to here is your blurring level. This is the safe zone. This will do 2 blurs, but I'm just using the one side. So the blur I ended up with is about 45 pixels. It's located up here. And once you're done, just hit OK. So now looking at this, it looks pretty good, but I want to change the color of her pants. So make the runner layer here, this top layer, active, and we're going to actually click on the photo icon. So let's use the quick selection tool. So we'll go behind here and use that quick selection tool. And then we're going to select her pants. Now it's selecting beyond her pants, so I'm just going to use the Alt key for negative. On a Mac, you use the Option key. And then I'm going to just slowly go down. Now it deselected it because it went too much. So I'm just simply going to make the brush a little bit smaller, and I'm going to select again. Because the smaller the brush on the quick selection tool, the more picky the selection tool is. So there, that looks pretty good. And my brush size was 15. Now sometimes you'll get a little bit of a selection up here, but we can double check that real quick with the Q key. As Q is in the key next to the W key. So if you push that, you'll see it does a quick mask. And Q stands for quick mask, and it can give you an idea on what you're actually selecting. Now, if you look closely, you can see that it didn't select this area here. So if you go to I like to use the pencil tool because it is solid and there's no edge to it, feathered edge. So if you paint with a quick mask enabled, when you paint it, it's going to paint the mask. So what we're going to do is just paint in the mask. Hit the Q key. You can see actually the marquee right there. So I'll enable it again, and I'm just going to go in and paint over that area that's not selected. So now it looks pretty good. Now if I were to go like this, see how it changes the selection there? All I have to do then is go in and hit the eraser tool. And erase the mask. There. And then I'll hit the Q key to just show the just the selection. I'm going to pull back so you can see it. So now I'm going to go down and select the fill tool. And contents, I'm going to actually select color. And I'm going to select a hex color. I'm going to select 4747FF, which is a blue. And then I'm just going to select OK. I'm going to set my opacity because I don't want it to be 100%. I want it to be 75%. And then for blending the mode, I'm going to select overlay, because what overlay will do is overlay the current color that is there with the color that we're selecting. And I'm going to hit OK, and bam, The colors are the color of their pants are now blue, and the details are still showing through. So if I did normal, it would just do one big blob of color, and it wouldn't overlay, and you wouldn't get any details like the lines on her pants. Then just hit Command, then hit Control D on a PC or Command D on a Mac, or select, deselect to get rid of the marquee. So now let's use the puppet warp, and we're going to adjust her head and actually change her neck a little bit. So we'll click on the top layer, runner. We're going to go to the Edit menu to puppet warp. So in the options bar, we're going to set our density to more points. So then we're going to go around starting at the bottom, setting pins around the outline of her body. And then crossing over at her neck where we're going to actually tilt her head backward. So I'm going to click points along here. I'll make it a little bit closer because it's easier. Now I'm going to cross over her body right to here. And then continue along her back. And then once we're done, I'm going to go back up to this one right here, and I'm going to click on it. Then I'm going to hit the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac, and you'll notice that this comes up, and then you notice that I can then make her nod back and forth. I'll pull back a little bit so it's easier to see. Again, holding the Alt key on the PC or the Option key on the Mac, I can change her head. I'm not going to make it too high. I'll just make it a little bit higher, like that. I'm going to change it back to about 46 degrees. So it's just up a little bit. You can see the angle is here. Once I'm done, I just hit the check mark. So notice the wires are too small for the puppet warp to work, so it just deletes them. So let's go ahead and fix those wires. So we're going to go down to the background layer here. And we're going to right click on it and duplicate layer. And we're going to just name it headphone wires. And we're going to drag it all the way up to the top layer. And then we're going to view it. Then I'm going to go to the elliptical tool here, and I'm going to draw a circle around it. And again, I use the space bar. I can move it around as long as the mouse is held down. Make it a little bit bigger here. Then I click on the mask tool, and it masks everything else out. So then you can see the wires here. So now we just have a picture, a round circle of floating wires. So with the headphone wires selected, we're going to go under Select and Mask. And I'm going to use the Quick Selection tool. use the quick selection tool. I'm going to hold the Alt key down on the PC, Option key on the Mac, and I'm going to start deselecting areas. I'm going to keep the brush pretty small because I want it to be really kind of a fine point. Like, I want it to really be careful what it's selecting. So notice I did it all. It's okay. I'm going to come back and I'm going to use the refine brush, and I'm going to try to get it back. It's not doing that great of a job, so I'm just going to go in and add it a little bit more. There, I'm using the quick selection tool. I'm trying to grab it. Again, it's not doing a very good job, so we could just manually do it then. There, that's much better. Use the refine tool and make their brush a little bit smaller. And I'll make it even smaller. I'm going to back up, and it's a lot better than it was. And I'm going to set my shift edge to plus 25%. And I'm going to output to a layer mask and hit OK. And there, it looks a lot better. So once that's done, we're going to go under File, Save As. We'll save it on your computer. And we'll type in lesson 8 underscore complete. A PSD. And I want you to save this. And I want you to save it and keep it somewhere because we're going to use it for next week's lesson. But go ahead and save it. And then once you're done, I want you to save it again. Save as on your computer. Save as a copy. And save it as a JPEG. So it's lesson 8 underscore complete dot JPEG. And then I want you to turn that in for this lesson. So I hope you enjoyed this lesson. It was a little complicated, parts of it, but I hope you enjoy it. And I hope you learned a lot. And I hope to talk to you in the discussions. Have a great week.